And we are live. Yay. Welcome back. Whenever you're joining me, if you're joining me right now, welcome. Welcome back, family. We are back in the building, back doing this work, still becoming supernatural every single day. If you're new here, my name is Brittany Starks. I am your manifesting mentor, but I'm not a coach. I'm not a guru. I'm just the woman who's walking the walk and sharing what works. And what I've been doing for the past several weeks is reading Becoming Supernatural by Dr. Joe Dispenza, chapter by chapter, live in community. And so tonight we're reading chapter 10, and this is where he shares more stories of transformation. These are real people who are using the tools that he talks about to practice and create a new life for themselves. And I'll be honest, this chapter gave me what I needed it to give because I've been navigating some very tough emotional things um, in my emotional terrain this week. And we're going to talk about that too, because the whole point is not about being perfect, right? It's not, you're not doing this work to land something in a perfect way. You're doing this work to become aware. And that's what I want people to understand. The whole premise of all of Dr. Joe's teachings is to make you more aware. This is why you do the meditations. This is why you do the walking meditations, the mind movies, blessing your energy centers, is to be more aware moment to moment of number one, how you're existing in your body. Are you being a good steward of your body, or are you constantly returning to patterns that jack up your nervous system, dysregulate everything, and send your immune system in a tizzy, creating all sorts of things, including disease, right? Or are you being a good steward who knows how to bless those energy centers and brings yourself back to homeostasis even when life's, right? Because it's not about not being triggered, and it's not about not ever having problems. That's not what this life is about. It's about learning your power in spite of, right? So to become conscious is another side effect, and also to choose differently, because choosing is your superpower. It's the one power that we have complete control over. We get to choose. And that's what these stories show us. So if that sounds good to you, you can drop some hearts in the comment section. And we're going to get started with case study number one, which is of a gentleman named Tim. And Tim's story is cool because owner, he owns a shop selling food. There's a story of how he attended multiple workshops of his, of Dr. Joe's. But this particular workshop, he really wanted to double down on working with his mind movie. And so part of Tim's story is that he struggled with the idea that wealth and spirituality could coexist. And so many of us can relate to that. If you grew up religious, um, you know, you might have subtly, subconsciously heard messaging that riches are associated with the devil or somehow evil. And those who are righteous don't worry about wealth and don't worry about money, because that's not godly, right? So Tim struggled with that idea of wealth and spirituality, even though he didn't take the traditional religious route. But in his mind movie, he didn't picture cash. Instead, he pictured coins, which for him was a symbol of not just wealth in the traditional sense, but affluence, because he looked up the word affluence and it meant to flow towards, right? So he said, wouldn't it be wonderful if everything that I desired flowed towards me? And so he let the coins in his mind movie represent this. And at Dr. Joe's retreat, he received a physical key from the team that Dr. Joe works with that represents unlocking your future. Now, why these two things are very important is because his story of transformation, he was able to get the divine to speak to him in a way that was right for him, and that's how he knows that what he was doing in this work was actually what influenced his outcome. So after he had a mystical meditation, right? And in the meditation, Dr. Joe gets you to dimensionalize something from your mind movie. Tim says he finally felt worthy because he realized that underneath the story of um, not really buying into the idea that wealth and spirituality could coexist was really a feeling of him not feeling worthy enough to receive. And so that the coins and the key really symbolized him unlocking his future where he felt worthy. So fast forward, he goes home, and one of his customers from his futon shop gives him some money to basically in her will, and she hands him a key to her lockbox, right? Where these coins that she's leaving to him, which total a large sum of money, she's leaving it to him, but she hands him the key to open it. And that exact same symbol he had received at the workshop was that key, right? To access and unlock his future. Like, what are the coincidences and the synchronicities in that? That he had the coins in his mind movie to represent affluence, and he was doing the work, and then he gets a key from this woman who wants to leave him her fortune, and it's coins. Yeah, that's alignment, and that's what you call embodiment, because it wasn't until he started to feel worthy that he could even have that experience. And I love his story for that reason, because it just reminds me that we really do influence the things that we allow ourselves to encounter in this life. We have influence based on who we think we are, based on who we choose to embody, like what we choose to embody, the stories, the emotions, all the things. And I was sharing a little bit of a reflection where I had a tough spot this week. I had a tough spot this week emotionally because I was triggered. Some old stories came up for me, and some of those stories pulled me back into this feeling of not being enough, right? Because they were patterns that I had experienced for many, many years, and in two different areas actually, without going into too much detail. But just like Tim's story, um, meditation was key for me because I didn't deny myself the opportunity to feel those feelings. And I say opportunity because a lot of times we think we have to run from emotion because they're not so fun to experience. But I actually learned the opposite. In my experience this week, I allowed myself to feel. I had a nice little cry in the corner, right? Not really, but you know what I mean. Um, but it was the awareness, right? We do all of this work to grow more and more aware of when we are slipping in and out of different states of consciousness. This is why we do the work. We do the work so we can recognize, hey, I'm doing that thing I usually do that's pretty much tied to the beliefs that I used to have. And I say I used to because I'm doing the work to not really have those beliefs be a belief for me anymore. I don't have to buy into those stories anymore. And so, like Tim and his meditation key, awareness unlocked for me and a knowingness that I am enough. So I let myself feel the feelings. And in the end, I felt like, oh, that was just the old man. That was just old emotions fighting to stay here. But I don't live there anymore. And I can let that go. And I know that the truth is I'm more than enough. I don't think I would be doing this work if I didn't truly believe that at my core. But the stories of the past seem so convincing in the morning, in the moment, that if you're not careful and you let it slip past your subconscious, you will begin to believe that belief again. You will believe the thoughts that you're thinking. And I always say, don't believe every thought you think, because it's not always coming from a space of truth. Sometimes it's not even coming from you. It might be coming from stories in your past, other people's opinions about you that you don't have to accept and surrender to. You don't have to keep giving your power away, not to other people and not to that old voice in your head. You don't have to believe it. And so I recognize that I am more than enough, just as I am. And it's not that I never knew this, it's just we all will have moments, right? We'll have those moments that are so tempting because it's familiar. It's what our subconscious knows because we practiced it for so long. And when we get into that space, it's easy to slip back into those old patterns. And so Joe told his story because in those moments where he could have slipped into that unworthiness feeling again. He was doing his meditations. He was reminding himself that he is worthy, watching his mind movie, letting the coins in his mind movie symbolize worthiness, not just wealth, so that he could actually feel worthy enough to receive. And when he did, and he surrendered to that feeling and lingering in that emotion of worthiness, he goes back home and boom, things like clockwork just start coming into him. And it came in a way that he couldn't have predicted. And this is what life does for us when we can accept and surrender to the divine and our divine truth. And Sarah had a very different story, but her outcome was very similar nonetheless. Sarah was somebody who she had an accident where she injured her back. And so she was living for many, many years with chronic pain to the point where nothing she did worked. And doctors were recommending surgery for her. And Sarah, she had been to Dr. Joe's retreats as well. But this particular retreat, she came and she also worked with her mind movie. He talked about this. But Sarah also did a walking meditation with Dr. Joe during this particular retreat. And I think he said that her mind movie, before she did the walking meditation, her mind movie showed her doing aerial yoga with and also playing with her kids because of her chronic pain. She had a back injury. They wanted to do surgery. She couldn't really do anything physical without being in chronic pain. And this was a version of herself in her mind movie that she hadn't physically experienced in so many years that she almost forgot what it was like to be active. But during her meditation is where Dr. Joe asked them to dimensionalize a scene. And she chose the one where she was doing aerial yoga, which is the yoga where you're hanging from these scarves or like sheets, and you're just doing yoga poses in the air. And so for her, that was a stretch because she's coming from not barely being able to move without having chronic, like severe pain to the point where her doctors wanted her to have surgery. So imagine living chronically in this state of pain, but then somehow allowing yourself to believe that you can do something like aerial yoga, hanging upside down with your spine bent in all different kinds of ways. Like it was a stretch. But she chose that scene. And when the meditation ended, she couldn't feel the ground because she was so immersed in her scene that she was dimensionalizing in meditation. And she said that the experience of doing the aerial yoga in her meditation felt so real that her pain didn't even feel like it was a thing anymore. She felt like she was in that scene so well that the pain disappeared from her body. And it didn't just disappear from her body in the meditation, it disappeared from her body once she came out of the meditation, and it did not return. At least not, we haven't done a follow-up story, but in the book, it didn't return. So she walked out of that meditation pain free. She had what Dr. Joe calls don't quote me on this. I think he calls it miraculous healing, or I forgot what it's called. I forgot what it's called. Something transmission, where like I don't know, miraculous transmission, regressions. I don't know. Don't get me to lie because I can't remember what it's called, but it's a particular phrase that he calls it that happens at his workshops where some people get these instant transformations, instant healings at the workshop. And apparently it's because collectively when the energy is really, really high in the room, it's more concentrated. And that's why people are actually able to have those instant healings when they're in workshops at Dr. Joe's workshops in group settings. But from my understanding and just learning more about coherence healings in general, and this is outside of Dr. Joe's work, there are plenty of books about it. You can learn about it on your own. The Heart Math Institute teaches a lot about coherence, heart and brain coherence. But there are other teachings, and I'll tell you a book. I'll link it in this video actually. There's a book, and I forget the author, but she talks about how you're able to it could be two or more people that can come together and learn how to raise the frequency of their bodies through blessings of the energy centers or energetic practices like that. where you can raise your frequency enough and then set your intention, and you can have an effect on people who aren't physically in the room with you. And at Dr. Joe's workshops, he talks about how people on opposite sides of the room can go into coherence at the same time just by intending it when the frequency in the room is high. So is this stuff is like it's not woo woo, right? And they're demystifying what used to be very mystical and people thought it was magic or whatever, but we're electromagnetic beings. And the whole premise of me teaching or sharing about this is because I need people to stop treating this like it's so far fetched and it's out there. This is why people are paying attention to law of attraction, law of assumption, because they know there's some truth to it. We have some influence over our reality. We just don't fully understand how and what. And people like Dr. Joe are helping to help us understand why and what. And we respect the people like Neville because Neville got us to go into imagination and believe in that again, that creative ability. But someone like Joe is giving you the science as to why that actually works. It's not woo woo and it's not magic. It's literally our ability as human beings. We are electromagnetic beings. Everything is energy, and we are playing off of the energy in our environment and also the energy that we bring from within. That's it. That's all. At any rate, so back to Sarah's story. Um, One of the things that came out of Sarah's story for me was that she, when she landed from her meditation, and she said that it felt more real than her pain did. I resonated with that because I find myself having moments like that in meditation where I could feel physical sensations in my body prior to going into the meditations. And as I sit with my, sit in the stillness, sit in the field, and I really disconnect from my problems, my circumstances, all the clutter in my head that's constantly going. And I just tune into the frequency in my body. I tune into the sensations in my body. The more I linger in that, I notice that whatever pain or uncomfortableness I had been feeling, I feel less and less in that of that as I sit in the meditations. So this is how I know that it's not just something that they're making up, because when you do the work you start to see the similarities, you start to see yourself in other people's stories. And that's part of why the case studies, how Dr. Joe every ever so often in the chapters he'll introduce a group of stories, because he wants you to not forget that, hey, this is what happened for them, and it's not about comparing, but I need you to know that if it can happen for them, what if you just take a chance and do the work? What could actually happen for you? And I can honestly say that I've come out of meditations pain free from different issues that I have been having. And the more I practice feeling that safety in my meditation, when I come out of meditation, I'm learning how to walk with that energy as well. As Dr. Joe is teaching in the walking meditations, you learn how to take what you do in meditation and bring it to your waking hours when you're actually going through your day, encountering issues, encountering people and different dynamics that you have, and being able to soothe yourself in moments when you're triggered and return back to homeostasis. And all your body needs to know is that it's safe to do that. And when it knows that it's safe to do that, it'll start doing it automatically. But you got to practice getting there. Through the repetition is how your body feels safe. Through the practice is how you get your body on board with feeling like I can be safe in my life. I can be safe in my body. I can be safe in this circumstance, even if certain factors don't change, even if I don't see the proof yet. The practice is what gets you to override your doubt. It's what gets you to override the memories that are stuck in your body. When you continue to practice, your Dr. Joe says you're creating new neural synapses in your brain that tells your brain every single time you practice these meditations, or that imaginal scene, or you dimensionalize something from your mind movie. Every single time you repeat that, you're building a new neural synapses in your brain. And over time, your subconscious is receiving it. And the more you repeat that to your subconscious, it doesn't know real or imagined. It just knows this is where my attention is going. So this is what must be true. So that's why, like, you can repeat things that are a false, that are lies, that are unloving, unkind to yourself. And if you do it enough, your subconscious will believe that as well. But in this work, we're conditioning ourselves to a new mind. And hopefully, that new mind has less of what you don't want and more of what you do want. That is more loving and more kind and less unloving or unkind, right? Less like the old man, more like who you really are. And so that's what Sarah's story was for me. It was a reflection of my own practice and the things that are actually working. And I could see her and Tim as the 4 minute mile of what's possible. And then Dr. Joe shares a story of Terry. And Terry's story is, again, different but similar in the outcome. That he did a walking meditation in one of Dr. Joe's retreats in Australia. And his body, or her, I'm sorry, Terry is a woman, her body began to shake uncontrollably. And it was partly because, from what she understood, she felt like it was an energy releasing. So she allowed this uncomfortableness of her body shaking uncontrollably because she felt like the trauma of her past was leaving her body. And this is how she explained it in her words. She said, it felt like the trauma was leaving my body, but not just from this lifetime, but from generations of pain and trauma. And she said in that moment, she remembered who she truly was. And she was a soul that was choosing to let go. And she felt like when she finished her meditation, the version of her who finished the meditation, she felt like her higher self was calling her to that moment. So she had a full on reflection of every single day for the past year leading up to this workshop that she went to in Australia. She reflected on that. She said, dang, every day I got up and I was consistent. That was my higher self calling me to do the work so that I can end up here at this workshop in this moment to have this divine experience of releasing trauma, not just my trauma, but generational trauma. Because she also reflected on some pain from her father. I think they said her father tried to commit suicide or something. So she lived with this sense of unworthiness and, just fear of loving and things like that. And she was able to let all of that go in this one walking meditation. But I guarantee it wasn't just the one walking meditation, it was all of the meditations that led up to this particular workshop. And so for her, the upgrade wasn't the mystical experience of having this intense energy rush through her body, it was the awareness that she was finally aligned with the version of herself that she had been calling in all along. Now, she probably didn't feel these intense emotions every day that she was doing the meditations leading up to this workshop. But in this workshop, she had a breakthrough. And I've been doing this work too. And as I mentioned to you guys this week, I had to practice what I preach. I had to practice what I've been putting out all these weeks, reading Becoming Supernatural and doing the meditations every day. And as I'm going through the chapters, remembering my why, right? I was triggered. I get triggered just like any and everybody else because this work doesn't erase my humanity. It doesn't erase all of the problems that are in my life. It just helps me become better equipped to navigate them and also to have some influence over them, right? In a sense that if I'm no longer energetically aligned with certain things that are in my life, they're going to fall by the wayside because we're no longer a match. And this is how people are able to change their lives, not about waving a magic wand, but by becoming vibrationally aligned with what is more fitting for them. And so, whatever issues are in their lives, if it's not a vibrational match to who they are being, then those problems have to melt away. And that's what people in this work are seeing. They are seeing miraculous healings happen because, as Dr. Joe often says, if you're no longer emitting the frequency of your past, and the past version of you or the current version of you has different diseases, ailments, or any chronic issues going on in your body, if you decide that you're no longer going to be that version of yourself, you're going to raise your frequency and be a version of yourself that's not constantly stressed out, that's not constantly dysregulated, that deals with issues from a higher state of mind, that practices being more in homeostasis than you are in stress hormones of adrenaline and cortisol, right? If you're going to be different, then Dr. Joe says, then whatever conditions are there, they belong to the old person. So if you continue to practice being your future self, the version of you want to be, then you're no longer the old person. So whatever those issues are can no longer exist in your current body because you're not being the version of you that you used to be that created the conditions to begin with. And this is why we do the work. We become supernatural so that we're no longer continuing the patterns of the past that got us where we are today. I think it was Les Brown that said something like, your best thinking got you here. And if you are here in this present moment and there are some things that you drastically want to change because they're no longer working for you, your best thinking got you here. And so it's going to take reconditioning your body to a new mind, right? Someone who believes in possibility, who believes in the potential, the infinite potentials that exist in the quantum, who believes that you can tune into any one of them at any point in time and embody the frequency of that potential. And the more you do it, the more your body's going to be conditioned to something new. And whatever was existing that wasn't working can't continue to exist that way. This is what we're doing. This is what it means to become supernatural. And I said a mouthful, right? as always, but it's a lot to take in and it's a lot to really learn and grow from. You know, so many of us think that healing takes forever, but now we can see that pain is real, but alignment is also instant. It's instant. The moment you tune out of what pains you mentally and emotionally and just tune into a potential of relief, tune into a potential of, you know, solutions. Your body is receiving that as, oh, we're not in danger. The problem's solved. I'm not in trouble. This is resolved. And once you feel it first, your body catches up fast. That's the power of pre-experiencing. That's why we rehearse mentally. That's why we create the mind movies. We tune into new potentials in meditation. We do the walking meditations or we change boxes because it's all mental rehearsal. And this is extremely effective across the board. If you've ever tuned into any personal development teachings, you will have learned that mental rehearsal is a major factor because it works. Napoleon Hill talks about it in Think and Grow Rich. He talks about mental rehearsal. Neville Goddard tells you that imagination is God. He tells you that creation is finished. Once you imagine something, believe it real, and so it shall be. Like, this is why, you know, the Bible even talks about vision. It's all mental rehearsal. Prayer, the proper way to pray is to see something for yourself, whether it's in an imaginal act or just a pure desire, and to tune into that potential, believing that is so. When ye ask, believe ye have received, and ye shall receive. Like, there's all kinds of reminders in our physical experience as to how we co-create, how we exist in this reality, and how we don't have to continue to be victims to anything that is not serving us, right? So this week I my own personal experience really just again taught me to not be so hard on myself because I get triggered, right? Because I've had some questions come online talking about whether or not they're doing the meditations right or if the work is actually working. And you know, I understand why people could ask that because you feel like you're not getting anywhere or you're not seeing proof in your reality. But it's less about comparison with others and less about proof and just more about how much more aware are you in your waking hour, because that's what this work is awakening us to awareness, right? Because awareness, from awareness, you can exercise the one superpower that every human being has, and that's the power of choice. You may not control everything in your life or in your world, but you absolutely have full autonomy on the thoughts you choose to think, the feelings you allow yourself to feel, the pattern you allow yourself to continue to return to or not, right? Your superpower is choice. So all of this work is really just helping us to remember, be aware of how we're existing, and then exercise our superpower of choice by tuning into a new potential, tuning into a new outcome, embodying the feelings of whatever we desire more than we embody the feelings of what we don't like. Because you don't get what you want, you get what you are conscious of being. And if you're not conscious of being what you desire to be, the only thing that's keeping you from being conscious of being what you desire to be is you are not practicing it. You treat it as a thing that's over there rather than bringing it in here and making it a part of your daily practice. Practice makes mastery, is what I always would say in my TikTok videos. And so the more we can remind ourselves to do the work, to do the practice, and Dr. Joe says it all the time, the work ain't hard. It's pretty cut and dry, right? The hardest part is making the time to do it, because we're all so busy. We're all so consumed with what we feel is important, right? Even if it is just scrolling on the phone or watching Netflix, it's a part of the program, it's a habit. The hardest part is making the time to do it. But when you make time to do it, I don't care if it's 10 freaking minutes a day. That is better than nothing, because 10 minutes of pure, concentrated presence in the direction of what you want is so much more powerful than vain repetitions of just doing it for the sake of doing it and not being connected. I heard Joe say that some in one of the lectures, that someone was like, "Well, how often should I be doing XYZ?" And Joe was like, "Listen, as often as you can be present with it, right? So sitting in meditation for 3 hours isn't, he says, it's more effective to sit in a present meditation for 10 minutes if you can focus your attention, intention, and awareness for 10 minutes straight, versus sitting in a meditation for 3 hours only to come out of that and return back to your old program. So again, it's all about awareness. It's all about conditioning, reconditioning, and you recondition through practice, because practice makes mastery. Yeah, guys, that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. And what I love about these stories is that they aren't fairy tales. He's pulling stories of everyday people, people like me, people like you. Um, and they're not fairy tales, they're a roadmap, right? When we feel the future inside first, when we walk into it during meditation, when we open our eyes and take our meditations with us in the walking meditation, when we choose to upgrade ourselves in real time, our bodies rearrange the reality around us to fit who we're being. So, when I was having my own triggered moment, rather than suppressing, I let myself feel the feelings, but then I paused and I took a deep breath and I chose my new baseline, because I chose that I know that I am whole and complete already, in spite of the feelings that I felt, because that's what this work is built for. Not perfection, but presence, being aware of when you're thinking the thoughts of the old version of you and pulling yourself back in alignment and letting that be your default baseline. So your body can feel safe to process whatever emotions it needs to, but you know how to return back to your new set baseline. So if this all resonates with you, if you're ready to test the theory of your own in your own life, walk with me, y'all. This is what we're doing. Chapter 11 is going to be next week. The full playlist is here on YouTube. The replay, you can watch it at any time. It includes all of my lives. Anytime you need your GPS for presence, just, click that playlist and let it be your reminder from introduction to where we are today. This is no longer just a book series, y'all. it's a living reference for the rest of our days. My intention is to keep this playlist open for whoever's interested, whoever decides to read the book and want to check out what I had to say about it or how we're reflecting over here about it as we're doing the work. And, again, the work evolves because we evolve. I will evolve. I will have new insights probably in another 5 years from now. And that's what you're supposed to do, right? Um, but yeah, thank you all for showing up tonight. I really appreciate you all walking on this journey. I'm really proud of you because this ain't for the faint of heart. This work is not always easy, but the hardest work you will do is the work you do on yourself, but it's also the most worthy work of all of your attention and time because you're giving it away to other people. You got jobs, you got titles, and different hats that you wear in your life, but this work is sacred. It's very, very, very personal. And as you become better, everything that you touch becomes better. Every relationship you're a part of becomes better. Um, every circumstance that you're a part of becomes better. This work has rippling effects. And I'm so proud of you for walking on this path and choosing yourself in this way. It's the most selfish and selfless act. And we're becoming supernatural, y'all. Anyways, I think that concludes my live. Also, I forgot to mention if you are interested in doing your own mind movie and also really getting into the walking meditation, I created my journal, which is titled I Want It All. It's a vision book journal for manifesting dreams. It comes in both pink and black. It's the perfect companion for creating your mind movie because it sections off different areas of life that are very important as I help champion you to create visions, goals, uh, whatever it is you desire in the areas of life that matter most to you. In the pages of this book, you can create that for yourself and reference it in your mind movie and reference it in your walking meditations. And hopefully, it's a wonderful companion for you as well. You can click the link in my YouTube description as well as in my TikTok um, bio. Yeah, but that's it. That's all, y'all. Happy Friday, or whenever you're watching this. And I don't know who needs to hear this, but this is your reminder. You got this. Bye, guys.